Hi, everybody. This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to the Everything Real Estate Podcast. This past week, I had the opportunity to sit down with Chris Godey. Chris is the Executive Vice President for the John Maxwell Company. And if you know anything about the John Maxwell Company, they excel in teaching leadership. And right now, we could all use some tips and some expertise when it comes to leadership with our clients, with our teams, and also with our fellow agents. So I hope you like this interview. You'll see Chris is a very engaging and exciting guy. His resume really speaks for itself. You'll learn more about that as well. So I hope you like what you hear. Listen to the interview, and hopefully this will give you some insight on how to lead in tough times. So I'm really excited today. I am here with Chris Godey. Now, Chris is the Executive Vice President for John Maxwell Enterprises. And I'll tell you what, Chris, I told you before we got onto this, I was kind of internet stalking you a little bit, and your resume kind of speaks for itself. I know that you've launched startup companies in the past in real estate, in manufacturing. You've played collegiate football. You've played professional football in the CFL. The list goes on and on and on. So I'm really happy and thrilled to have you here today to talk about leadership in tough times. So how you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Listen, in regards to all of that research you did, if there's anything positive that you saw in there, would you send a note to my house here, let my family know how good of a guy I am? But
Sure.
No, listen, I'm excited to be here. One of the things that we love to do is just add value to people. And all of that experience has given me the opportunity just to, what we like to call learn tough life lessons, experiential lessons. And so hopefully some things we talk about, I can pull from some of my experiences in the past and add value to those that are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've done podcasts in the past about just this time in particular. And it is such a unique time in just our experience, in our lives, but also just historically speaking. I mean, this is a historical event that will be remembered for, hundreds of years, if not more. So we are in the midst of kind of a once in a lifetime, once in a multiple lifetime, we hope, event. And so since we're here to talk about leadership in tough times today, I guess the first question that I would have for you is, what is different about leading today as opposed to say where we were just 2 months ago? What has changed in your mind, and what do we need to be focused on right now as leaders?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And what's interesting, when you just asked me that question, what I thought about was the first thing that came to mind is something that is key to leading overall, but I think has more emphasis on it now than ever in regards to the times that we're in. It's funny you mentioned this, a quick note, and you said, hopefully in the next 100 years we won't experience something like this, but history we'll talk about this. My kids are 19 and 17, and they said to me the other day, they said, "Dad, how cool is it that when I have kids and they're in history lesson class, they're going to be reading about going through the COVID-19?" And I was like, I guess that's cool. We're not enjoying the process, but you're right. It is something that, here's the deal. It's something that none of us have ever experienced before. There is not a blueprint of how to lead through this time, but there are some things that I think when squeezed, and that's what's happening right now, our leadership is being squeezed, that things are showing up. The first thing that came to mind is communication. I would say this, as a leader, one of the greatest things that you can do is become a great communicator. Now, when I say that, it's not just verbally processing, okay? Communication goes two ways. It's how you receive information, it's how you give information. And in times like this, here's what I've really learned over the last couple of weeks, is that if you don't understand your people, if you don't know your people, you're going to receive communication from them in a way that may not be intended for you personally, right? What I mean by that is that everybody, including myself and including you and all the people that I have the privilege of leading, they are going to process this type of information differently. And they're going to communicate to me differently. And hence, that means that I need to be able to, as a leader, receive that communication. But then also, I've got to be able to communicate effectively to them almost on an individual basis, because they all receive communication differently. So I say the word is communication. The underlying part of this is we need to know our people better than we've ever known them, because in times like this, people react differently, people communicate differently. As a leader, it's your responsibility to kind of close that gap for you and or your team member from a communication standpoint. The other thing I thought about when I thought about communication is we need, as leaders, we need to be more visible, and we need to be communicating more often than we have in the past. You know, the organization I have a privilege of serving and leading with, John, I have team members telling me it is awesome the fact that we get to kind of see each other on this Zoom, and we're hearing from our CEO, Mark Cole, we're hearing from you more than we ever have. And so we're getting feedback of saying, yes, we're in the midst of a crisis, a different way of living currently right now and leading. But what we're really enjoying is that we're getting to see and hear from our leaders more than ever. And so one last thought around communication, I'll kind of throw it back to you, is that if as leaders, we don't do a good enough job of communicating to our people, they're going to go find other resources to fill the gaps on what we're not communicating. And so I can only imagine what this answer would be, but some of us get our information from different places, and some of us get our information, too much information from certain places. And then they begin to fill their thoughts about the business world, about the overall climate. They're getting it from other sources than directly from their leaders. So communication during a time like this, I think, is so key for those little tidbits that I gave you, that as leaders, we really need to be thinking about what that looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. Going into this and the shelter in place, you're thinking, okay, well, my life's going to slow down a little bit. And it's quite the opposite. I
It is
mean,
opposite.
if I'm not on a Zoom call, I'm on a regular call with either, a client or a family member, or, someone that I need to keep in touch with. And to your point, I think now is the time where we need to reach out more than ever, to our clients, to our team members, to our agents, and make sure that, like you said, they're not getting those gaps filled in other places,
That's
right?
right.
We want
That's
to
exactly
control
right.
the message, and we want to give some, surety to those who we represent.
That's
So,
exactly right.
you kind of stole my second question out from underneath me there, because I was going to say everybody is processing this differently.
Yeah.
And everybody is so different during times that are strange to people, right?
Yeah.
And people have their own ways to handle things. And, how as leaders do we reassure these people the best? Besides, we talked about reaching out. But what actually can we do to paint a brighter picture for the days ahead, but still be realistic in what we do for our clients, right? How do we bring forth that authenticity as leaders to keep them focused and engaged?
Okay. So that is a great question. Even though I stole some of the thoughts there on the earlier question, you did a great job on that question, because what you gave me right there is three things that three things came to mind that I want to share. First, let's go back to just for a second when you talk about how everybody processes. I think it's interesting to think about, especially, for those that are in the real estate business, those that are agents, and even dealing with our customers and our team members. And I think we need to be aware of, specifically, you can get this for your team members, for your customers. You may not be able to get all of this, but I think it'd be an interesting process to begin to understand our clients or our customers in a different way. There are three buckets that I think you really need to be paying attention to and learning your individuals and your people, and how they process. What I want to let you know is that your people want to make sure that in times like this, more than ever, they are known. What I mean by that is not known, as a public star, as a, oh, look, there goes Chris walking down the street or whatever. Like they want to know that their leader knows them. And there's three buckets that you ought to really kind of pay attention to. Number one is what I like to say, how they're kind of hardwired. And so that is, a lot of us have taken personality tests, right? The DISC or Myers-Briggs or different ones. And so I'd encourage you to find a resource that allows you to figure out how they are hardwired. Because I always say when people get backed into a corner, when they come out fighting, they're going to come out how they're wired. In the South, how we say it is, it's how your mom and daddy made you. Now, sometimes I have to repeat that depending on where I'm at. But then the second part is we all have learned behaviors. And we have learned behaviors that come from external and internal influences in our life. And so we've learned how to behave at times. Remember, like in a crisis, in a pressure, not meeting quota, not frustrated, compensation, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden the stress starts, they're going to go back to how they're hardwired. The third area that I think is so important is understanding what their personal values are. And there's the difference between organizational values and what everybody values personally. And you need to know that as a leader, because if you are asking someone to do something that jeopardizes one of their personal values, you're not going to get the best out of them. So I wanted to hit that, because when you said that about people and their perception of and their response, I think as leaders, it's really good for us to dig in and learn as much as we possibly can about our team members. Now, to your question, I love that you said the word realistic, and we even, I think you mentioned authenticity, right? Our people that we have the privilege of leading during a time like this, or our customers, okay, they are looking to do business with people they trust. And here's the deal. Authenticity is a trust accelerator, okay? And so why I say this first is because in times like this, we do need to be realistic, and we do need to have a message of hope, okay? Because as leaders, everything that we say and everything that we do is contagious. I call leadership sometimes a visual sport, right? It's like, it is going to be contagious. Now, in times like this, our CEO said this the other day in one of our leadership meetings. He said, "Hey, I just want you guys to know, I'm not going to have my head in the clouds, and I'm not going to have my head in the sand," right? And so we, as leaders and our people, we need to have that sweet spot right there where we are being realistic. We're being authentic. We're saying, you know what? I don't know the exact answer. Or, you know what? I had a bad day, and this is just getting to me, and I need to get out of my house, and I need to go and travel and go whatever. Like be authentic with our teams and let them know, but be realistic and be very certain that we are going to get through this. It's going to look a little bit different. And so we'll definitely have to have certainty, but we don't have to have all the answers. And I think when, as a leader, that you can come and just be transparent and be authentic with your people, I think that creates a reassurance for them. I think it creates a message of hope. I think that it makes them feel like they're not on an island on their own. And so I think that when you do that, I think it's a great place to lead from. And then what you'll see is your people begin to do the same thing with their teams, or maybe even with their clients. And the other thing I'll tell you is this. I heard Joseph Grenny the other day say something. I think it's so true moving forward. Our clients and our team members, more than ever, are going to want to. They're going to want to know that they feel safe and that they are safe. So he's talking about the physicality and the psychological movement going forward as leaders that we need to be aware of, that they're going to want to know that they're safe and that they're going to want to feel safe. And so it's that mental and that physical side that now we got to begin to think about, whether it's in the office or whether it's out on a property or whatever it might be. Those are two things that I think, as long as you are speaking that to your team and communicating that to them, that'll create that message of hope and certainty for them.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the message of hope. I'm quoting John here, but I was listening to a podcast where John was speaking about being generous with hope, right? And I feel like this is just the perfect time to kind of hold on to that phrase, right? As leaders,
Yes.
that we do need to be generous with our hope. I know, it's challenging from our standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, I'm sure, because you mentioned before the Myers-Briggs, you mentioned the DISC assessments. most agents are, promoters, right? They're the gregarious ones. They're, they're out there, they're talking, they're yapping, they like to have fun. Now you're sheltering them, right? It's like a caged
Yes.
animal. Most of us are behind locked doors now. In
Yes.
Pennsylvania, we have some of the strictest shelter in place measures. And we also service New Jersey. We also service Delaware. We each have our
Mm.
own restrictions right now, but there are a lot of promoters out there, and power personalities for that matter, who are screaming, let me out, let me show some houses. And then you have this other contingency of agents that are like, no, we need to stay home, shut it down. And these two sides kind of clash with each other, right?
Yes.
And so, from a leadership perspective, trying to keep all those personalities kind of in check is almost an impossible task, right? So, what would be your best recommendation to deal with, I guess, the push and pull of what we feel, those two sides, right? I think we all want to be working,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we want to make sure that we follow the rules and we do what is right. So
Yeah.
from a leadership perspective, can you just expound on how maybe to handle a situation like that? And we have clients as well, to that point,
That's
who
right.
want to have people in the property, right? They want to sell the property, and then you have
That's
other
right.
sellers that don't want anybody near their house right now.
That's right.
So how do we best, I guess, deal with that and ground everything in maybe logic, from a leadership perspective? How do you feel the best practices to deal with that?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a challenge for us as leaders moving forward. I think that one of the things we need to keep in mind is that we need to make sure we focus on doing the right thing, not always being right. So many times, as leaders and or as people, we want to be right, and we forget about what we need to do in regards to doing the right thing, right? And I'm just going to give you a personal example, and I think this is it's ironic you asked this question. So I live in Georgia. My house is currently on the market as well. So I have
Oh,
an agent that's listing. I'm getting ready to downsize. Hopefully, I'm going to move into a small enough property that my kids won't come back someday. No, I'm just kidding. I love having them around the house. But so on the front end of this, my the agent that's listing my house was hosting open houses every Sunday, and we decided to stop that just because of traffic, but also people aren't going to be out and about. And so an individual came by because the sign was still out by the road. It said open house 2 to 4 on Sunday, and he rang my doorbell and he said, "Hey, did I miss the open house? Can I still come through?" And so to your point earlier about people that are extroverted, want to connect with people, I just come out my front door and I'm like, "Yeah, no, we didn't have it, but hey, my name is Chris," and I go to extend my hand and to shake his hand, and I'm ready to kind of connect. And literally, no lie, he pulls his hand away from me and was like, "No, no, 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 not shaking hands, not doing that." And it was the first time that it hit me that I was like, "Chris, you need to understand that people are going to handle this differently. And right now, we're not supposed to be shaking hands. So don't go try to shake anybody's hand because you're going to offend the other person." So I tell that story to say this because it was an eye-opening experience for me. And so I say this to answer your question, which is going back to understanding our people, okay, and then being obedient to what we've been asked to kind of be shelter in place and the different restrictions. I think we need to be respectful of how other people are dealing with this and how they are following the certain guidelines, maybe differently than you are. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily, just because they're following it differently and they have different safety precautions. You don't know their story. Everybody has a story. You don't know why they may be. Let's say we go to the grocery store and everybody's kind of just pushing their carts and avoiding the people, and we want to be respectful of those that are wearing their masks and the gloves and are definitely social distancing. And hey, would you please back up just a little bit for me, because we don't know what they're going home to. They could have somebody that's at risk. They could have an elderly parent living with them. And so oftentimes as human beings, we get into a place to where we just want to be right. Why doesn't everybody do it like I do it? This is crazy. They shouldn't be doing that. We should be showing houses. We should be out in the market versus what, just let's all take a breath and let's slow down and respect the fact that we need to be going and doing it the right way in order to respect other people and what we've been asked, by our government and certain restrictions, whether we agree or not. We've got to make sure that I think we keep other people in mind more than maybe we have in the past. And I hope this is a turning point for our people in our country, because I think that too often we judge ourselves by our intent behind everything, and we judge other people by their actions. And that's a problem, because there's a huge gap there. We call it, when we do a lot of training, we call it the intention versus perception gap. We call it the IP gap. And it's just natural for us to go, because we always have pure intent, right? We always have pure intent. And so we're like, yeah, that was, I was right. Like that, I had good intent. But anytime we see somebody else doing something, we never seek out their intent. We just judge them by their actions. And until we truly know the intent behind what they're doing, we shouldn't be judging anybody. So that's a whole nother lesson for you right there. But I think that's a great question. And I think we need to respect people more than we ever have.
I think that's just such a great answer to, actually, there's a lot to unpack in there, right?
Yeah.
But
yes.
That last part especially, it really kind of hits home with me, because that's how I feel every day that, you're on the internet, you're on social media, you see these people arguing back and forth, and it's just like you shake your head. And that's the kind of stuff that's deflating, right? During this time, I really do wish that we would work further, and more together.
Yes.
And I love that IP that you talk about, because it's just so true. I know that you're a busy man. I want to make sure that we keep you on task here, and we're going to stop it there for our interview, but I just want to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I could listen to you all day. So, I'm just glad to have you for about 20 minutes of your time.
Listen, I'm grateful to do this. And if you ever need anything from us or John's, enterprise, don't hesitate to let us know. Love to come and do another lesson with you. I appreciate you saying I'm easy to listen to. You have a pretty good voice as well. I say, okay, for me, I say to people all the time, I'm like, yeah, listen, John just said you have a radio face. So just stay off camera. My friend, you got the voice and the looks, and I appreciate what you're doing to add value to the agents that you have the influence with.
Well, you're too kind, Chris. I mean, the hair's getting kind of out of control right now. I'm starting to look.
Mine too.
When it gets too long, I start to look like Eddie Munster. So that's very kind of you to say. So anyway, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
That was our interview with Chris Godey. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had something to take away from that interview. I know from just talking to Chris and learning about the John Maxwell Company, I took away 4 key points. One is right now we need to be visible, and we need to be visible for our clients, for our agents, for our teams. We also need to be present. We need to be there for those that need us. Number 3, we need to be realistic, because we don't want to be overly optimistic in this time. People want basically the truth from you. They want you to be grounded in realism. At the same time, with my last point, they want you to give them hope. And what does that mean? Well, we want to give them hope that there is a brighter tomorrow and better days are ahead, which there are. So with that said, hope to see you next week. We'll be back with a special guest. Until then, take care of yourselves. Remember, wash your hands, stay safe, and we'll see you next time on the Everything Real Estate Podcast.